the failure of curiosity, I think, is what this episode is about. Me and Kate in our fourth conversation about how curiosity is kind of at the root of so much, because it is an opener. Without curiosity, you're closed. I'm closed. I'm closed for others, but I'm also closed for me. And I so enjoy having these types of meandering conversations with people who are curious. And I would venture that nobody who listens to this is not curious. So I hope that you will get as much out of this conversation between me and Kate as I dare speak for her too. We did. So jump in, have fun.
Yeah, are you feeling a little bit like you're drowning a little bit right now?
No, but I've been wait, I'm just gonna double check that I have you where I'm supposed to have you. Here. Now you're in my ears, I think.
Good. Okay,
Yes,
you can hear me?
you're in my ears now. Good. That's where I want you. No, I'm not drowning, but I've realized that me just doing 1 week vacation and that week was I was away traveling is a little bit too little. So there you go.
Sure.
I've
It's
realization.
just enough to help you relax, but to not actually stretch into it at all. And then you've got to get home. Yeah, a week is not long.
No. So
Yeah.
I came home kind of thinking that I'll make this week into a half vacation, but I managed to get a few hours of vacation in every day, but that's about it. So I will, but it's good. I like insights. I like lessons learned. So chalking this up for, next year, I'll make sure that I actually do. So
yeah, you just have to pay attention to those lessons, and then that's going to change everything the next time you make plans.
Yeah. It does.
Good.
So, but it's been good. I went for my 1 week vacation was me going 24 hours to my mom, who lives an hour north of here, and then a couple of more hours by train outside of Gothenburg for 24 hours with 2 friends who I just love. They are so wonderful. And then 3 hours bus and boat to an island off the coast of Strömstad, where I met with another friend, one of my wives, where I hadn't decided if I was going to stay 2 or 3 days, but I came and it was like, no, 3 days or 3 nights at least. So I was there, and then train down south of Gothenburg for 24 hours with my third friend, and then back to my mom for not even 24 hours, and then home. But it was interesting because I have not wanted to leave home for a couple of years. It's like I've really been like, I don't want to go anywhere. I have no desire, no drive, no nothing. But this felt good. I liked coming to these, and I enjoyed the difference of these visits. So it was a good week. If nothing else, because I kind of enjoyed the traveling, even though I still don't have an urge for it, but I enjoyed this.
Good. Yeah. I feel like everybody right now has to catch up on their rounds after COVID. And it's hectic, isn't it? I mean, there's not a lot of time in that week that you described for stillness.
Which
and
yes,
being in constant transit is tiring.
Yeah.
It's very draining. Like you wouldn't wish it to have not happened because you had to do your rounds, but And it feels wonderful to see all those people, but that's an exhausting week to never be in one place, to know that you've got another bus trip ahead of you the next day, or that you're packing your bag again. That's
But at the
tiring.
same time, the choice that I made, which I'm really happy about, is I went off social media and off kind of online stuff for that week. I checked the mail maybe 3 times during the week, but just to see if there was anything. I didn't read it. You can just tell who's it from and what's the first sentence. And it's like, okay, no. So I got that. And the longest stay was on this tiny little island in the Kosterhavet. Gorgeous. So I was barefoot the entire time, walking along, jumping on cliffs and going into the water and having those wonderful conversations with my friend. And just, so it was, it's like my ability to be there was surprisingly good. Maybe that's why I feel like this week was a good week. It's like because I was really there when I was there.
Good.
And I was my friends Jakob and Isa, who the people who live north of Gothenburg, they have lovely cats and they have lovely chickens. And so I was cuddling with Glenn, the cat. And I've never experienced a cat as cuddly as that one. And then Margareta, one of the chickens, she's blind since a year back, but they take so good care of her. And so I was sitting on the stoop outside in the morning sun, and Isa was there and we were talking, and then Margareta, the chicken, comes and she kind of, she nestles into your arms and legs, and then she kind of, you start to pet her, and she kind of falls asleep almost from just, so, those moments.
That's very vivid, very evocative. You'll always remember that.
Yeah,
Napping with a
very regenerative. It's like, this is there's a being, there's a presence in a moment such as that just, the rest of the world kind of just disappears, and I'm just there petting this Margareta, and she's just kind of nodding off because, how lovely just absolutely lovely to have those.
That sounds wonderful. Oh, that's really great. Every time I do encounter households that have chickens, I'm always a little inspired, more than a little inspired, because it would be so, it would be lovely. The more self-sufficient we can be, the better. But then I have also seen the realities of, the animal husbandry and having chickens and having to put them in the cones and, deal with sick chickens and disease and predators coming out in the morning.
The fox
and
coming. Margareta had a bout with the fox last summer or 2 summers ago. I think.
Is that why she lost her?
No, she lost her sight a year after, but she was so badly damaged that it's like, she probably won't make it, but she did make it. So I've said, if in my next life I come back as a chicken, I want to be a chicken at Isa's place. I won't accept to be a chicken anywhere else, but I can be Isa's chicken because she's just the best hen mother there is.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's always inspiring to spend time around people who have sort of put their whole heart into building their home and their lifestyle. It's contagious.
Yeah. It is.
For
And it's
sure.
like
Yeah.
those chickens they run free. They live in a gorgeous place just next to like a recreational area in the forest and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's good. So they run free or they roam, which then of course has, then there's chicken poop all over. But
Mhm.
on the other hand, those chickens are a part of the family. You can pet them, you can put them up on your lap and talk to you
They would eat
interact with
cake
them, right?
too. They eat
Precisely.
bugs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they eat what you don't want them to eat, so they have to kind of fence that in, etc. But the opposite would be to have them always in their pen or whatever you would call it, which wouldn't have you have chicken poop everywhere, but then they wouldn't be part of the family in the way that they are.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you give some, you get some.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lovely thing to see how how it and it is like you say, this is a deliberately curated life. They have set up their life this way. It's
Why
very
do you think?
intentional.
Yeah, what do you think is behind that? I'm always fascinated by people these days who are kind of going against the current of everything we've talked about before, from
Yeah, yeah,
the pharmaceutical industry to the food
yeah,
industry, and how broken everything is. And so
yeah,
what
yeah.
was it that kind of led them to want to live closer to nature?
I
Would you
think
say?
both of them have that in them. Jakob might be listening to this, so it'll be interesting to hear if I've gotten it right.
Yeah,
But both of them grew up on farms,
sure.
so they have that in them that you have this. You have the nature, you have the animals, you have
Mm.
the crops and the fruits and the berries and the mushrooms and
They're very independent
whatever.
people, farm families. I can't.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like almost all the people I know who grew up farming continued. Like
yeah.
I I think it must be pretty rare that you grow up on a farm and then
Turn
take
into
off
New
to,
York,
yeah, like
Manhattan
go into a
apartment.
city,
Yeah,
living in an apartment and eating canned
yeah,
food.
yeah,
It doesn't, yeah, most of the people I know kind of continue on, and
yeah,
obviously they iterate, but yeah,
yeah.
that's great.
And both of them are, they are conscious. They are both awake to the fact that I curate my life.
Mm.
It's on me to make what do I want my life to be? How do I want it to be? Where
Yeah.
do I want it to be? With whom do I want it to be? And how can I set it up in such a way? Do I dare dream? And what are those dreams? And am I actually making inroads on some of those dreams that I want to? It's like so they work very consciously on that, on designing their life, which
That's
is
one of
super
my, yeah,
inspiring.
I know that's one of my favorite words, the idea of curation, as a
Yeah.
writer, as someone who spends a lot of my time editing. That's just always kind of been a compulsion to me. And I think a lot about composition and all of those words as they apply to life. So composition, white space, editing,
Yeah.
uh, pacing, all of these
Yeah.
things are sort of, to me, the components of designing and sort of actively curating a life. And I find it really interesting, at this age that we're at least in the broad strokes. I've been thinking a lot lately about sort of the evolution of friendship,
Mhm.
the adoption of new friendship, and what it is I'm looking for now at 49 versus what was I looking for in high school or in university or when I was 25 or 28 or when I was a new mom. Um, and looking at sort of people coming in and out of your life and thinking about exactly this, and you're thinking about your friends. And this idea that when you connect with someone who is curating actively, so they have a fundamental curiosity about how to live, about what they input, about their intake, about their output, about what they produce and how. Um, and people who are inactive in their curation of life, or inactive in thinking about the vision of how they want to spend the limited time they have, or how they want to grapple with pain and loss and disappointment. Or I find it over the years, it's difficult to keep a friendship vital if that person isn't on that same plane of curation and active curiosity, evolution as a human being, intellectual curiosity. And I find myself kind of drifting, like, I don't know. And I've been thinking a lot lately, like, does that mean it's me? Am I the common denominator where I'm kind of branching off in different directions? And is that okay, or is that not okay? I don't know. And I don't know, when we were in junior high school, maybe it was easier to branch off into a more fully genuine expression of who I am. And if people come with me, they come with me, whatever. If they don't, they don't. Then we just hang out with different people now. But there's so much more to that when we're grown-ups, and I don't want to be an exclusionary person. I don't want to be someone who doesn't keep friends, or who doesn't, who's constantly thinking of myself as drifting from relationship. But yeah, you just touched on that in talking about your friends, and in the stimulation of being around people who are actively curious, actively designing. And those are the people that I'm just hungry for right now. And I find myself dealing with some of the other stuff that I'm dealing with, which is a lot, sort of medically and in terms of my health, that I get exhausted really quickly, like almost in a vampiric kind of a way, when I'm around people who are fundamentally uncurious. I get really tired. It's like,
Yeah.
I've told you about it before, the doldrums in the Phantom Tollbooth, the book, and this sort of dreary gray place where everything is kind of pulling Milo down so he can't move, and so that he stays in one place, and he really has to kind of shake it off, or it's a bit like the poppy field in the Wizard of Oz. And I think, like, I don't want to cut myself off. I don't want to cut other people off, but it's feeling like a really energetic, I'm seeking energetic alignment right now, because I want to be, when I'm around those people, I feel that invigoration. I feel this infusion, and I feel such a sense of humor and lightness. And it doesn't matter if we're exactly alike. That's not what I'm looking for, but I'm looking for that vitality of an intentionality of living. And when it's not there, it's I just find myself getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And that sounds snobbish, doesn't and I think
No,
a lot about that. Like,
no.
because some of these people are people that I absolutely treasure, but it's a very uh distressing thing when I think about someone that I've treasured for a really long time, that I start to get that feeling, and then I get in my head and I'm thinking, is this just me? Is this just what I do now? Or am I editing? Am I curating? Or maybe it's just natural that a relationship sometimes just peters out a little bit, and that there's nothing
Yeah.
antagonistic about that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think a lot about that these days. It's sort of, what is a friend, and what am I looking for from a friend? What do I require from a friend versus what do I enjoy from a friend? And what kind of a food do I need? What nourishment do I need from friendship?
Precisely.
Because I'm
Precisely.
feeling lately like it's changed. And whether it's this second puberty as being this particular age, I don't know, but it's been on my mind a lot lately. And yeah, it's made me, sorry, I went on and on, but hearing about your friends and the chickens, and just I recognize that feeling. You've got that sort of sparkly, fulfilled, glowy thing because you're coming back from a place that allows you to be relaxed. And when you're around people who are, so this sounds really hippy dippy, but people who are kind of vibrating on the same frequency, it's interestingly really stimulating, but it's also really relaxing because you don't have to measure every word that comes out of your mouth. You don't second guess yourself. You're not editing as you speak because you can just be a normal human and they're a human and they accept you and you accept them and you can relax.
And
you're
there's
not pretending.
No, precisely. And that is, I think again, I look back at my life and I see the shift in my life in the friends I keep and the friends I make. And I'm good at making friends. It's one, I've made lifelong friends from Twitter. It's like I'm good at making friends. And so me and Susanne, who I was with outside Strömstad, for 3 days, just the most interesting conversations. So not a second of that, oh my God, could somebody please beam me out of here because this is boring? Not even a microsecond, It's like, really, this is just stimulating. We don't have to talk all the time. We can sit and draw or read or just be or rest or whatever. But whenever we do talk, it's interesting. There's a depth to.
Yeah.
And, it's like, we had 3 days together. We weren't even close. It's like, I don't think there is such a thing as finished talking because there's an entire universe of interesting things that we could talk about, and we do. And both Jakob and Nissa, same thing. It's just fascinating, interesting about life, about choices, about what you want, what you feel, what you experience. It's like in interesting ways. And same thing with my friend Anders, who I, came back down. Just such a lovely place to just be. I'd never been at that place of his, but it was just, I can just stay here.
I can see you traveling back to it right
now. Just the feeling of it is like, it's not as if we have to entertain each other. No, he was doing some gardening and he plonked out some soft cushions for me in a rock crevice so that I can sit and draw and read, enjoy the sun. Is it? Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then I had a couple of hours with an old friend, 25 years back, that I haven't seen in a couple of years, and we don't have that much interaction. But it wasn't the doldrums.
Yeah.
But it was, okay, a couple of hours every few years is enough. I don't need more. A lot of conversation not really going deep. We did manage to get deep after a while, where I find that's where
There's
I
a
get
lot of people
the stuff.
who have no interest in depth whatsoever.
Precisely, which is fine.
Not interested.
And it is fine, but I do enjoy the other things. And so
it's a frequency thing. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely. And it's fine to have. It's like, I won't cut her off. I won't say I don't ever want to see her again. I enjoy seeing her. I enjoy making sure that she's okay and that, you get to hang out for a little bit. But 3 days on an island with her? Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
But a couple of hours? Absolutely. So there's the choice as well. And I don't see that as snobbish. I see that as discernment. I see that as me being an active curator, knowing what do I give, what do I get, what do I nourish, and what is the cost of this? It's like it's all of those.
That was a word that came to me there as I was listening to you, is cost. What is it costing me? Which seems like a really negative stance to take, but it isn't just that. It's everything else too. It's nourishment and because I do feel like there's a lot of pressure on all of us at this age to live in a way that is with full agency. Whether it's taking radical responsibility for our health, radically checking out of all the trappings, whether it's social media or growing our own food or whatever it is, having a more sustainable life maybe. And I feel like it's an interesting time of life because we're all at that sort of midlife or beyond phase where our kids are starting to launch out of the house or close to it. And we're all kind of like, okay, how should we be living here? And the world is crazy. The world has completely lost its mind. And so how do we want to be? How can I best look after myself? How can I best look after my house, my family, my community, my world? Is that even too big of a thought? And so there's a fair amount of, it's a bit of a pressure cooker for people our age. And I think there's a lot of people who perhaps don't like to go deep, who are not comfortable with, like, to me, it almost feels like way back when I first had my kids, and there was always these stories about how judgmental other women are, about who's breastfeeding and who isn't, and who's baby wearing and who pushes the stroller. And there was always a lot of chatter about that, but I never really experienced it. No one seemed to really give a shit. As long as you love your kids, as long as you're doing your best, you certainly would encounter other parents, other moms, and think, I couldn't do it that way, because that would drive me crazy, having my house in that state or having no bedtime or whatever it is. It's, we're constantly confronted with philosophical different flavors of of the choices people make. But this feels like that again in a lot of ways in terms of, and again, it feels like mostly women that are kind of looking at me, looking at each other, looking at acquaintances and saying, well, she's trying to do this or trying to do that, or I don't care about, like, there's a lot of action being taken and a lot of defensiveness and a lot of conflict that's imagined and a lot of sort of noticing different in how people choose to live and not always celebrating it, but often being kind of suspicious of it or
judgmental
and dismissive, or just sort of there's some resentment of change that I noticed that feels like people are resenting you for not being just like them or for not making the same choices, or you're just a walking billboard for the opposite choice of the choice they've made. And so they feel confronted just by your presence.
Yeah. But so I wonder if that isn't to do with a lack of curiosity.
Could be. Yeah.
That it is because if you're curious about the differences,
well, that's where the change starts. That's where you start actually taking action and doing things differently. And it's not to judge anyone for not doing it, but it's interesting in the same way as when we have an infant in our arms, we walk around the world literally wearing our philosophy. People can see us enacting it all the time because the kid's right there, and you can kind of clock someone if they're one of those attachment people, or if they're one of those let them cry people. If you hang out for just a few hours, you're going to find those things out, and you're going to say, well, this is this type of woman, this is that type of woman. And it's I just feel like it's an interesting time of life, because I'm starting to see all these sort of waves of inspiration, which are really fantastic. And people sort of really choosing their paths, or getting antagonized by the paths that other people choose, whether it's not drinking, or drinking a lot and being one of those very gregarious kind of festive people, and it just feels like there's a lot of us that's at this age again, like almost like a second puberty. We're going through this. We're all second guessing ourselves. We're all being a little defensive. We're all sort of reading each other in a way that's like, did you just say what I think you're trying to say? Or were you just passing, like noting and passing? And it all sounds neurotic and terrible, doesn't it? But it's definitely something that I'm seeing. I don't know.
I was at the end of July, I attended a Twilight retreat. And one of the things that, and it was like, it was amazing. 3 days of amazingness in the company of 16 women, 2 workshop leaders, and 2 assistants to the workshop leaders, or to the workshop, or us. So all women, 20 women in this gorgeous place. And one of the things that they were offering over and over again was the choice. So, okay, we'll do a little centering breathing exercise. So hold your finger here and your thumb here and do this and breathe this way and close your eyes.
Right.
Thing. I've written it down so that I can remember
like
what
one
to do.
Nostril
But
and then the other nostril.
In and out and the other way.
Yeah,
precisely. And so they were, all the while they knew this is a breathing exercise. This is how to do it. But they were constantly offering, sit down, unless you want to stand up. Close your eyes, unless you feel like having them open. Breathe slowly, unless you feel like doing it faster. So it was interesting to pick up on how they were letting us sense into, what the fuck do I want right now? Do I want to lie down and do this? Do I want to stand up and do this? And it made me see how little of that type of choice, how little of that type of agency is there. Look at schools, look at work, look at church. It's like, you stand up when there's a star in the little pamphlet for this psalm, but not for that psalm. Then we can sit down. In school, it is sit down, be quiet. Now you get to talk. Now you need to go outside. Now you need to come back in again. Nowhere are we really trained. Do you want to sit down right now? Or do you want to stand up right now? What does my body tell me? What do I need? It's like, okay, you need to go pee. It's like, but I don't need to go pee. But you have to go pee because you know that you will need to pee before the next break. And all of that stuff. So it was so revelatory that they were asking this, or offering the choice back to me over and over again for 3 full days. For 3 full days, which just made me, explode in realization that how little we are trained to actually consciously sense, where am I right now? What does my body need right now? What does my state? What's my state? It's like, we don't do that. And he's like, is it a wonder that we have autoimmune diseases and people being, burnt out and depressed and drinking or obsessed, having addictions? And it's like,
all the crutches
is it all of them? Because we're not really doing the other way. We're not feeling. We're not here. We're not processing ourselves in the moment, which is what they gave every time they asked, let's sit down unless you want to stand up. It was a way to pry me to go, no, I want to sit down. Right? It's like, it's a checking in. It's a checking in. Where am I right now? What would feel good for me right now?
Yeah.
It was awesome.
But it's also, you've already entered into an implicit agreement as part of a collective. So since you have entered into that implicit contract, within that container, it's lovely to be given choices and agency and opportunities to kind of self-determine that experience to a degree. But the reason why that works is because you have entered into that shared contract that you are all seeking something similar, that ultimately your goals together are reflection, stillness, meditation, whatever those overarching goals are, as opposed to someone who would say, I don't feel like sitting or standing. I feel like stripping off all my clothes, helicoptering my dick, and screaming about kittens and running around in circles and disrupting everyone else. Because if we did say everyone should be allowed to self-determine and choose whatever they want all the time, that would be anarchy, right? Because there's no container that is shared, that is a communal goal together. So it's so interesting to think about that why is it that works, and when does it work, and within what kinds of containers, and what is it that restrains us from stripping off all our clothes, helicoptering body parts, and then running around in circles. And then you think about other structures, other contexts that are sort of agreed upon, but also not really, because we're just pushed into them, like the school system. And you think, well, if we gave that kind of freedom to boys who do not sit still, who do not learn the same way girls do, into a very female-designed, female-led system, which is why boys are slipping and boys don't do as well in school and boys have attention problems, because they need the physicality, they need breaks, they need different kinds of learning, they need hands-on, because they're different to girls. So if we said that in a classroom and said, whatever you feel like doing, you can do, you can listen to your headphones, you can talk to each other, you can get up, you can sit down, you can leave, you can go run around the school. At some point, we're going to compromise the collective. Whatever we're trying to impart isn't going to be imparted because it's anarchy. So it's so interesting to think about that, because I love what you describe. I would love that too, because a lot of the time, if I'm in a retreat or a class like that, and I've been told exactly how to sit, and this is where to put the bolster, and this is where to put my hands, and I feel instantly ornery because I'm like, but I don't like having my hands here. Maybe I want to have my hands just here. Maybe I want to have them down and not up. I don't know. So it distracts me, because I think like, well, I'm not used to sitting like this. And so all I'm doing now is I'm thinking about how I'm not used to sitting like this, and I'm feeling the quirks and the discomfort, and I want to jump up and run around naked. But
so it's interesting
there's
because
something to structure that we need, but there's also that
balance. Yeah, but that's the thing.
That's freedom. Yeah,
that's the thing, though, because this is me and Özlem in episode something or other about parenting, I think was the title. We spoke precisely about this. And he said, same thing. He said, oh, but it'll be anarchy. And I'm like, I mean, if we were to say now, everybody do whatever you pleases you, yes, that might turn into anarchy. But if you look at a world or a community where that is how everybody has been raised, it's like, let's say that, okay, we start that journey and then in a 50 years or 100 years, everybody has been raised that way. I don't think it would be anarchy at all. I think humans we are pattern seeking. We are system generating.
Yeah.
So I think we would find that. But an artificial structure such as school, which is, as you say, very female-centered in many, many ways. And in Sweden, ever since the 50s, boys have been slipping.
And I think it's the same in every Western. There's more girls going into university now, finally, than boys, and that's
precisely.
not
And it's
what we
like,
want.
and no, it's a problem because people aren't getting what they need, basically. But if that system wasn't that system, but actually was, and I don't think there is one system, but if we had a society where learning was encouraged, where the choice was encouraged, I am 100% sure that the majority of people would find what they want, would find, ooh, I'm curious about that. Let me go check that out. Who is around me that knows something about, dirt roads or offshore oil drilling or the little worms, earthworms, or technology. Wherever you would go, you would go, wow. But this, we have put on top of us this gigantic blanket of everybody needs to have this much information that's the same information, otherwise we won't have a society. And I go, I really don't believe that anymore. I might have done, but I don't anymore. And I think having I can envision a world where people are self-conscious, self-aware, and knows, I need to stand up right now, or I need a drink. That doesn't mean they stand up and say, hey, somebody get me a drink. It means stand up, gently leave the room and go find some water and then gently come back again. Right? So I don't think that most people, a huge majority of people, would strip naked and start helicoptering. A few would, and I think the collective that is there would be able to handle that. For most instances. Then there's, people who are sick. That's something else, right? But that's not who I'm speaking about. It's like, okay, normally functioning people, how would we be able to do if we were trained to actually listen more to ourselves? And it was interesting because when I was saying this earlier in this conversation, I was thinking back on our conversation about the Stoics and about feeling everything, etc. And it's so different from that as well. In my understanding of this, it isn't, oh, I'm going to go all in on me and just, become ego focused and not care about others. It's more, I'm responding like this when she's talking, or I've sat too still for now. I need to start to move my butt, or whatever it is. It's like it's a little finely tuned sensory awareness that is there already. I mean, the 80% of all of the information in our body comes from outside of the brain into the brain. It's massive, but we're not made aware of it. And that's what I felt that they were just shining a little light on, this fact that your entire system is talking to you all the time. What if you start to listen?
100%. And all of that, it's really hard to tease apart our context, our potential, our nature, all of these things, when we have all of these panaceas like weighted blankets on top of everything. So it's really hard to talk about something like school or group meditation or any sort of shared endeavor, any collective, without looking at the comorbidities that are influencing how that system works or doesn't work. Again, like all of those things that we've thought of before, food, when and how we eat, exercise, and how little fresh air and sunshine most people get. And the sort of the way that we get our wires crossed, leaning, towards self-indulgence, which feels like empowerment. Well, I don't feel I'm going to accept myself just the way I am because I'm okay. And it's like, but you're not okay though. I mean, it's not up to anyone else to say that, but eventually we have to look in the mirror and say that. And there's just a lot of people that are sort of dressing up, giving up as self-acceptance to make themselves feel better about not trying. Because a lot of the time, the weight that's on all of us from all of the bigger systems, the systems that are even bigger than school, education, the job market, all of those things are kind of middling systems. They don't feel like it, but they are. But the bigger systems are, what are we ingesting? What's in our water? What do we get out of urban life versus rural life? And all of these sort of bigger considerations that are perhaps influencing us in ways that we don't even know, that we don't recognize.
And not even perhaps, they are influencing us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I'm trying to temper my words as if I'm talking to normal people. And you're not, which is wonderful. Yeah, no, I mean, but a lot of the time I hear myself talking and I hear myself as other people might hear me. And I think, okay, tone it down. Because it's been so revelatory for me the past several months that there's so much now that I just get, and I'm just at the precipice of all of these different movements and types of people and all of these things. And I'm like, I can see that. I can see that. I can totally see that. Whereas before I was standing so much further back from the ledge that I might have looked at those people and thought, well, they've obviously got a lot of time on their hands. Or like, they're obviously understimulated, or they're not getting enough from their job, or this is their little hobby, their little fixation. Oh, isn't that nice for you? And I'm, because it's very confronting sometimes when you meet people that are kind of, the wacky barefoot people or whatever it is. Exactly. And we want to push. We literally do this. We're like, okay, nice to meet you.
Yeah, like, but stay away. Yeah.
And we smile, but we're kind of like, this is
a very guarded smile. It's a very guarded smile.
You're ringing a bell that I don't want rung. So good luck with that. And we laugh about it. We've got to have a sense of humor with these things, because you're not ready until you're ready to actually start examining the sustainability of your life as an individual and the quality of it, because that's hard. That's really super confronting and difficult. And when you start thinking about all kinds of things, from your body to your body's potential and future, to your mobility, to your relationships and friendships, it's a lot to take on. And so when you see people doing things really differently, even if it feels like something small, like not wearing shoes that have a sole or not drinking, these are big things that are constantly like being put in front of us, and we're like swiping left or swiping right on the dating apps. It's like, nope, not for me, nope. And that's how most of us go through the world most of the time, is to be like, we've got our comfy little sort of phone booth of assumptions around us all the time, fairly close to us.
And don't anybody challenge them.
No, don't interfere, because I've got my ritual set up. I've got my daily routine set up. I can't do that. So, and I think we've talked about this before, we've talked about capacity for change. And I think, several months ago, change was forced upon me. And I started out thinking, I can't do that because I can't not drink. I can't not eat all of those things all at the same time. Like, I could maybe cut out sugar for a couple of weeks, or sure, I can reduce my caffeine or whatever it is that I have to do. But all of that, all at the same time tomorrow, I can't do that, because how am I ever going to go to a party again? How am I going to keep up with my friends? Because they are all constantly going to a place I can't follow. When I'm sitting there at a concert and watching everyone else slowly and gloriously get drunk around me. And I'm just sitting there feeling more and more and more and more sober. And I can't go where they're going. And they're all sort of up in front of the band, and they're all, woo, and they're all hugging and singing along to Meatloaf. And I'm sitting back thinking, like, it's just me now. Like, I can't do this. And so I went that night, I went to my car, and I just kind of said to my husband, like, I'm not pulling a snit. I'm fine, but I'm feeling like there's a vampire. I'm getting that vampire feeling. I'm empty, and I need to crawl to the car and just sit, because I'm too in my head. I'm like, I was almost weepy because I was watching everyone, and they were all adorably drunk in that wonderful way. Of course, when you miss something, you'll only see the best of it. You don't remember somebody holding your hair back on New Year's Eve. You see the sort of blissful camaraderie. You see the dance floor and the Meatloaf and the dashboard light and everyone doing all this. And you think, like, you feel lost. You feel real lost. But so I would say to myself, I can't do that. I can't do that kind of friendship anymore. I can't. But of course, once you're pushed into a position where you have no choice, then you're like, okay, well, so if I could, what would that look like? Because here I am, and I don't want to be hiding in my car from drunk people for the rest of my life. I don't want to resent them for having an awesome time, or resent myself for not joining them.
For not joining,
So, yeah. So it's just, most people don't have anything to push them into shifting their I can't do that. So when you are pushed to confront even just one assumption about our capability, and you've got no choice but to power on through it, it's like, well, I can, because now I have mushrooms. I have different kinds of contemplation. I have completely different recipes now that I didn't know before. So I didn't know I could before. And then you're kind of in this new space. And I think that's just to bring it back around to where we started. I think to try to explain how I have to be now to people who've known me for 20 years or 30 years. There's a lot of, I can never do that. I couldn't do that. Nope. And it's this weird kind of pity, empathy thing. But it's like, but you could, though. You don't have to, but of course you could. And it's a weird place to be in when you're feeling very othered in a health way, othered in a life values kind of a way, othered in the sense that you're awake in a way that you weren't before. And then you're looking at friendships, you're looking at conversations and just thinking, I don't think I've got anything to say here. Like, because we're just too different now. There's been a boundary that I was shoved across.
Yeah.
And now it's so much harder. But now here I am on the cusp of another I can't. Because now I'm saying to myself, I would rather hide in my car, or I can't relate to this person anymore because they're almost 50 like me, and they haven't been through anything yet. Nothing. They haven't experienced death. They haven't even seen a dead body. They haven't had chronic illness. They haven't. And again, and this is where I was before when my baby died, it's a funny kind of really arrogant snobbery, like where you feel like it's like, oh, I know pain now. Like it's weird, but you need people who can tolerate you in the darkness. And so now I'm on this cusp of thinking, I can't. Like this is running out of steam because we're too different now, like in every possible way, intellectually, creatively, socially, with culinarily, in every possible way, finding the threads that we can kind of tiptoe across to each other. A bunch of them have fallen away. A bunch of them have dropped.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't know how to get over there anymore. I just don't. But I can either try, I can either find new ways, or I can go to my car. And I know what I would prefer is to find new ways and to figure out how to be in the world where I am like very few other people that I'm around, which is a vibration that I just have to get used to. And again, it sounds really, without me explaining the whole sob story, which I do my best not to do if I can avoid it. But it sounds weirdly, oh, I'm so unique and I'm so different. And I'm like, it sounds like a specialization of oneself. And that's not how I mean it to come across, but everything is so upended. And that's the gulf. The gulf is not a medical diagnosis. The gulf is everything has changed so much. Even before the diagnosis, it had changed so much. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I find myself. But charting all the I can'ts and thinking, well, hang on. This is a very strong I can't that's coming through to me right now. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is just a signal telling me I need to relearn something, because look at all the relearning I've already done that I didn't think I could do. So, yeah.
And I wonder if the muscles that we have for, like the mental, emotional, physical, psychological muscles we have for facing something like what you're facing, or when your kid died, or when my husband calls and break up and I'm 9 months pregnant, or divorce, or whatever it is, right? Facing those traumas. Would my muscles be stronger if those little choices were something that was a part of my ordinary daily life in the way that it is not in modern day society, at least not the way I do. This thing of because what I don't know if I'm making sense here, but so when they say, okay, sit down unless you want to stand up, close your eyes unless you want to have them open, they are giving me two choices. They're not saying sit down unless you want to do something else, whatever that might be. And that unknown is like, what is there in that unknown? What is even possible for me to do? That's where I make the connection between what you're speaking about. This, I can't do this, and this. You say that you found mushrooms and you found other things, contemplative methods, etc., that you did not know existed before.
Right.
Right. What if we have a culture where there's more of that exploration, not because of trauma, but because we're curious, because we are interested to find out what else is possible. You see somebody doing something and you go, wow, instead of, oh, no, there she goes, all barefoot again. I'm not going to do that. It's like, what are you doing? Are you walking barefoot? It's like, yeah. And I wonder if it's like training ourselves to be more present, aware, conscious of potentials. If that would that make traumas less traumatic? Or
I think, yeah, the word that came to me as I was listening to you was improvisational. So even though the choices you were given were very small choices, so they are just to help you design the next 5 minutes in the container of this experience. You can either sit down or stand up. So that has edges to it. That's not just limitless choice. That you can either, it's not, you can sit down, stand up, or do whatever you want. So that's obviously a distinction that we make, but small improvisation encouraged everywhere. I think when you think about the rules of improv in the theatrical sense, it's not, it's always yes and, right? And you do that a lot in your speech and in your thinking processes. Instead of saying no, but the way to respond to something new happening, and this is total, I still call him Jocko in my mind, but I know you call him Yako. I'm not sure which is right. It's tricky if he has that sort of ethnic background, but he's American. Who knows? I should look that up. But that's a very Jocko thing. Is his good speech is, you get this terrible news, you're bankrupt. He's a soldier. They don't get the guns they needed on time. They have sort of limited ammunition, whatever it is, having a background as a Marine. And his response to that is good. This gives me the chance to stretch. This gives me the chance to prove my mettle. This gives me the chance to improvise and do. So that's very much a yes and stance. So that when I start my improv and I say, okay, so we're in a room, and then I turn over to my left and I see a shark. I pass it to you and you say, no, but you're in a room. There isn't a shark in a room. Okay, well, that's the end of our play together.
It's dead. Yeah.
Opposed to you saying, yeah, and it's in an aquarium and we can see the glass, but there's a crack in the glass and the shark is nosing against it. And then I'm like, okay, we really got a story unfolding here. And then I say, yes. And suddenly I can see drips coming through the crack, and there's a knock at the door. And so that's how improv works. And if we think about that in life, that we get a diagnosis, it's hard. It makes it sound like you're trivializing some things, but it's hard to say yes. And when the baby dies, or when you're told that you might not walk much longer, or when you're told that your husband is walking out the door and completely upending your life. It's hard in that moment to go, okay, this gives me a chance to show my stuff. Like, it's not like it's a joyful kind of improvisation, but it's still improvisationary in nature to say that here's the input I've been given. Here's the information I have. What am I going to do with it?
Yeah, precisely.
Am I going to change? Am I going to adapt? Or am I going to buttress up my boundaries and insist that I will not change, that I will stay the same, that I will resist what's happening to me, or I will just take the pill and hope for the best? Instead of getting curious about root cause instead of symptom, right? I'm going to come in from the bottom instead of just looking to big pharma to rain down on me from the top while I keep feeding stuff into my body that's going to cause problems. And that's really, that's a metaphor for everything, that we're constantly looking for the easy
quick
button,
fix,
which is kind of raining down from above. And instead of looking at the ground and looking at the dirt, looking how we're rooted, looking what are we putting into our system? Every body is a system. And what is already out of balance in our system, and we already know this. All of us know it. It's not a mystery ever. The way that I see it, we know how our system is out of balance. Are we ready to face it? Are we ready to own it? No, most of the time.
I'm reminded of I'm re-listening for the gazillionth time to My Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, which is the third book in his series of Ishmael. Read them or listen to them. I love them.
Yeah.
There's Tankespjärn on every page. But in the third book, he does a really good job at explaining indigenous cultures. And one of the things that he points to is that when you have smaller tribes, they're always place-centered. It's like, it's this environment. It's these, this is the flora and the fauna. You can eat this, you can not eat that. The water is over there, and it's like, it's very place-centered, which also means that it cannot be general rules for everybody, because there's a big difference if you're on the plains of the US as compared to the mountains in the Himalayas. It's just different. It doesn't work. The same plants don't grow there. It's like you need to find what works in the local place. But given that, there's also tribes then kind of close to each other. And what he points to is that most tribes indigenously had a life strategy, which was they played erratic retaliator. So we keep you on your toes, tribe over there.
Yeah.
And now and again, we're going to shock you, and we're going to come and steal a horse or a woman or, take something from you. But we're not going to eradicate you. We won't annihilate you. We won't burn everything down. We won't do that. But we'll just make sure that you keep yourself on your toes. But not really the indigenous tribes if you go back. So because then the other one played erratic.
Don't exist anymore for that reason, but
erratic retaliator, and it's like everybody knows that, okay, that's the game. It's like that's the game we're playing. And the interesting thing,
essentially nation boundaries.
Yeah, precisely. Smaller nations in a sense, right? But the thing that I was coming to was in the third book, he says, if you're playing the game of erratic retaliator, you have to be in a state of constant alert. It's like, because you don't know. Is the neighboring tribe coming tonight or tomorrow night or in a year or in 10 years? You do not know. You have to be diligent, which means that everybody in the tribe has to stay fit, has to keep themselves in such a shape that I won't be the cause for us dying, or if we need to run,
and soldiers the same.
Precisely. And it made me look at society, because we don't have that. This is why so many of us are not fit. We wouldn't be able to face a challenge such as that. And it's like, because we have a different set of rules of how to play in this world. And it's like, it's interesting because, yes, you are right. Firefighters are like that. Military people are like that. Police should be like that, but you can find a lot of overweight police.
Well, they have guns, so they don't need to be.
No, because they can play Annihilator. They can play Annihilator. Yeah. But it's interesting. I think this the notion to kind of make sure that I am, I'm movable, I'm strong, I can run or I can walk for a long time, etc. That's actually something that is very logical. That I
Oh,
should
yeah.
take that responsibility for
On a
myself and
group
make
level,
sure,
yeah,
yeah,
and individually too.
yeah,
There's several things that makes me think of. It's so interesting nowadays that our culture claims to be it's an individualist culture LARPing as a collectivist culture. It doesn't really mean it. So
nope,
if you think of a tribe, uh, those are ultimately a really pure manifestation of a collectivist culture, that you are always thinking outside of yourself. You are
mm,
doing what's best for the group. You are protecting and doing the best job you can for your family, for your neighbors, I mean, none of those words are the right words for what a tribe actually is, but for your community is not right either, but for this web of people who are bonded
yeah,
together in a
yeah,
really sacred way and in a really ancient way. And so that's true collectivism, because everyone gets beyond themselves, gets beyond the self. I mean, that's why we admire so much the reverence that Native culture has always had for elders. So that there's this very uh, powerfully taught humility. And I've been on reserves, I've been in the schools, I've done a lot of presenting and as an author, and I've seen how the kids are there, and it's very different.
mm,
They are not sassy with adults.
mm, mm,
There's other problems,
mm,
absolutely, and extremely deep ones, as there are in any human
mm,
group. But that's certainly not one of them. So there's this really pure collectivism that is about, I owe it to my brethren to show up in the best, most heartfelt, most physically strong, fastest, most productive form that I can. And that's going to ultimately be good for me as well
mm,
as an individual. Whereas now in modern culture, it's all about, what am I entitled to? Respect me or else.
yeah,
You know, I require you to affirm my dignity, backwards several times on itself. All of this stuff is about me, 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 me. And it's narcissistic world that would claim to, those same people would then say that they, think that maybe communism just hasn't been done right yet, that they're sort of more collectivist in nature in that sort of economic sense, and we should take more from the rich. I'm like, okay, how do you do that without being Mao? I don't know, but there's ways that we can iterate and make the world better, but they just seem to have almost a childlike view of the hammer and sickle and the collectivism, and that we should be doing this for everyone, and hashtag kill all the rich or kill all men or whatever it is these days. And so it's like a false collectivist culture, because really it's ultimately just a collection of narcissism and a collection of rampant individualists who don't know work ethic, who think that merit is a bad thing, that they would actually have to develop skills, and that it's not about your skin color, your gender, who you like to screw, whatever it is, but it's about what are you producing and delivering and educating yourself to be able to do. And I think that what appeals to me right now are calls, you know, so put it this way. So I got this diagnosis many months ago. And half a year ago, more than half a year ago now, actually, January. And in talking to my kids about it, we talk about it a lot because they see me eating, and it gives me at first I didn't tell them for a while, because I thought, look, I don't even have many answers yet. They're going to ask me questions I can't answer. So I was going to wait for a little while. And then my husband said, look, you're kind of, you're denying them the opportunity to see you. Crisis is too strong of a word. You're denying them the opportunity to see you change
yeah,
and to see you process new input, new information. Don't deny them the chance to see their mother say, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what now? Okay, here's what we're going to do. And so we told them, and since then, when I'm cooking, when I'm eating, and everything is so different now, they'll kind of comment on it and we'll talk about it. And the other day I said to my son that I was so grateful that, and I don't think it was necessarily conscious, but it kind of was. I was heading into my middle years, what I hope is my middling years, and thinking, shit's going to go down. It's going to be something. It's going to be cancer. It's going to be heart disease. It's going to be, we don't know. For most of us are not going to get hit by a bus. Most of us are going to decline slowly. So I think it's probably wise to bring my body to whatever that day may be in its best possible state so that I feel strong, energetic, so that when I look at all of the levers that I have at my disposal, food, sleep, stress, water, activity, movement, fresh air, touching
Friendships.
grass, all of these things, friendships. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So that I'm not coming to that inevitable day as an alcoholic, a smoker, as, really heavily overweight, that my body is already under stressed and out of balance. So it sounds like a really dry and boring way to live. And I don't necessarily think it means don't do any of those things, never indulge because you might get cancer someday. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just really glad that when that day came for me, I was able to check no all the way down the list of comorbidities, habits, everything is going under the microscope. And I'm just like, thank God, thank God, thank God. I wasn't one of those people who lives on hungry man dinners. Because what would I do? I would take a pill and slowly decline because I wouldn't be able to care for myself because I don't know how to improvise.
The steps would be so, it's like, but there's
so it should be something we ask ourselves all the time is, am I ready to improvise?
Yeah.
Am I willing to improvise? Am I ready? Am I really ready though? Like, do I have good habits? Have I made my body as strong as I can make it? And it's a little bit of a kind of stealing oneself. We don't bounce the way we did in our 20s and 30s. Things are getting a little crotchety now. We can feel it here and there. We grunt when we get out of bed, all that stuff. So that's kind of how it feels to me, is that I want to be as strong as I possibly can, because nobody owes me shit. I do not want to look at big pharma or big government or whatever it is and say, look after me, take care of me,
save me.
Oh, daddy. I want to save myself. So it's kind of like for my collective community, for my province, for my family, for my friends, it is best if I bring my strongest self to this challenge so that I don't hide from them in my car, so that I can be mobile, I can be completely fulfilled without any caveats. And that's also then going to bounce back on me and be best for me as well. So whatever I spend investing in making myself part of a strong, true, actual collective that isn't just about destroying things and ripping everything down, then that is going to give me the ultimate result I want, which is all those things that people are screaming so much about, but haven't earned: regard, respect, dignity. It's like, honey, this can only come from you. You can't demand it of everyone else you encounter. It's all of the golden rules put together into one. You treat other people how you want to be treated. You come to the table as strong as you can be, and the regard and respect and opportunity and fulfillment are going to bounce back off everyone else and back onto you without you even realizing it. So, but it's ultimately that radical self-accountability, no excuses. And that's why I kind of land on the drill sergeant form of
the Jocko. Yeah, I was just going to say,
right?
Yeah, and Jocko is a
Yeah.
good example of that from the book that I've read and we've talked about. It's like extreme ownership it is interesting to read that or listen to him talk about it also because he is humble. There's humility there. There isn't the blah, 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 just,
Oh, yeah.
macho, macho, macho. There's a humbleness to it that I really appreciate. But I was going to say, it's interesting to hear you bring in improv into this because what I was supposed to be doing after this recording is go to improv with Özlem because in our conversations, we have been talking about improv, but turns out the thing that I'd found was not for beginners. There is a Tuesday club for beginners, so I've texted him, Özlem, to ask what date would suit. So we are doing that
Fun.
because I think it's a challenge for both of us. I think for me, the challenge isn't so much the yes and way of responding because, as you say, I've been training myself to do that for many years by now. For me, the challenge is the theatrical aspect of it, which I'm really looking forward to. But that was just an aside. The thing that I was going to say is there's a fantastic episode in the Alan Watts Being in the Way podcast series that I will
note down.
Yeah, I will send it to you as well. So it is an episode where it's one of the houseboat conversations. He apparently had a houseboat. It's from 1967, I think. I've listened to it 3, 4, 5 times by now. With him, Timothy Leary, Allen Ginsberg, and one or two more that I don't really know who they were. It's a fascinating conversation about tuning in and dropping out. This was the 60s. It was the hippie era, yada, yada, all of that. But it's super interesting. And one of the things that one of the men says when one of them asks the question is like, okay, so what should people do if they want to start in on this path of, okay, maybe, stepping out of the trappings of modern life and like sensing into how do I do that? And they say, go local. Look what was in you, the place that you are a long time ago. What did the Native Americans or the indigenous people, where you come from, what did they eat? What did they hunt? What plants did they use for medicine? Where did they find fish? All of those stuff. So it's like kind of a dig where you're standing mentality of look at the locale. What has this locale been able to feed before? And I just think it's a lovely little pointer. And it's at the retreat that I was at. There's one of the participants, a fantastic lady who lives not that far from where it was, which isn't that far from where I am. And she has made a year of the runes, the old Nordic Scandinavian way of writing with runes that I know very little about. She's made an online course out of that. So there's 24 runes, so it's every 2 weeks. So it's like full moon, new moon, full moon, new moon. You get a new rune, something. And it's starting now. So I'm like super excited about this because this, for me, is just this. Runes are local. They come from here. I can be however fascinated I want to be about indigenous people in Australia or the US or wherever.
Or tarot or something. Yeah.
Yes, but here, okay, we don't know that long ago, but this is at least 1,000, 2,000, maybe more years ago. This is what happened here where I am. So I'm really looking forward to digging my roots down deeper here in the locale of where I am to see
Absolutely.
just this. How did people live here? And what of that is informative? What of that can I use? How can I go, yes, and with that?
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, no, we can't do that because we live totally differently. Yeah, we do, but there is a yes and there. There is.
Well, we do. We live totally differently, but we also live in a way that's completely messed up. And I think we know it. I mean, every time I see a picture of an audience from the 60s or 70s, 50s, even 80s, it's like we are now like Wall-E. Like in the movie Wall-E, when we see the humans living on the ship and none of them can walk because they're all
they're sitting in these robotic chairs.
It's quite the metaphor for this idea of kind of big government and trusting too much in the institutions and we'll take care of you and we'll give you everything you need and it's going to be so wonderful and indulgent and it's like, no, you're being crippled by it. You're being literally crippled by care. But I think the way that I think about it in terms of where I am, that's a good way of putting it, to look at like how did people, subsist off the land 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. But I also feel like for me, it's in trying to describe it, because I don't like rattling through the list. I don't like talking about it a whole lot if I can avoid it. Unless people are keen, like I am, then I'm like, okay, well, now I can actually kind of nerd out a little bit on how I'm approaching my health at the moment. But the easy way to describe it without listing all the things that I can't have is just to say, more or less, with some degree of shifting, if a food didn't exist 50 or 100 years ago, I don't need it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the simple way of putting it, because people are like, well, if I list it off and they say, well, what do you eat? I'm like, vegetable, meat.
Yeah.
Most fish.
Food. Precisely.
Just
food.
Because even back then, like even 50 or 100 years ago, we hardly had any sugar at all. It was just a little bit. It was an occasional thing. Dessert was not a daily, thing.
Intake.
And I mean, it's, who knows? I mean, the only difference there is bread, of course. But that would be another way of looking at it, is when you see how fast the world has changed and how rapidly the population has declined in response to that stimulus. A lot of the stuff that has been a problem for me is everything that was invented in the last century. So it is the matters. I mean, it is pretty much going back and eating the way that Indigenous people would have eaten, or for that matter, all Indigenous people, Indigenous British people, Indigenous, all of the people who kind of are from where they came from, who 100 years ago, 200 years ago were smashing grains up and growing gardens and harvesting meat and hunting and fishing. That's where I am. And it's actually not that complicated, but our food system has made it complicated. So, interesting.
Have you read Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb?
I feel like I've heard of it, and of course, that's one of my favorite concepts.
Yeah,
we have anti-fragility because we have coddled ourselves into almost frantic fragility. And
precisely. And it's an interesting book. I really don't like the man because I don't find him humble at all. That's not the way he runs. And it's like, that's fine. I don't have to follow you on Twitter because I'm not interested in that story.
Oh, sure.
But I so love the book and I love the concept. But one of the things he says in the book is, he basically says, I don't eat anything that wasn't around 2,000 years ago. So, and all, so that's what he said, because what was around 2,000 years ago was basically around 200,000 years ago as well.
That's right. And that's the rate of change. Yeah.
But since then, we have, so there is a lot of vegetables and fruits and whatnot that did not look the way they do. They don't look the way they do today.
Yes.
1,000 or 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, we didn't have Monsanto.
Apples, bananas, lots of the fruits. Yeah, precisely. It's like we have genetically modified them to be more and more sweet, more and more savory, more and more this, that, and the other thing. We have taken away a lot of the addictive. We have taken away a lot of the bitterness out of things as well, and bitterness, like the astringent qualities of a lot of weird tasting plants today, those are really good micronutrients. But it's like, no, we don't do those. No, because we've gotten so used to things being so sweet and juicy. Everything is sweet and juicy. But it's like back in the days, there weren't that many things. Maybe there were wild raspberries around. But strawberries, the way they look today, did not exist. No. They did not exist.
And all poultry, too. Poultry used to be tiny.
Yeah. Like a jungle chicken. Yeah.
Wouldn't feed. And now, they're so tiny, it's amazing to think that a family would eat a chicken.
Yeah.
It wouldn't, because they were so small. And now they're just these kind of grotesque,
bloated,
watery and hormone pumped and God knows what else there's.
Yeah. That are kind of speed fed, the most nutrient rich or energy rich, you should say, grains or soybeans, etc., so that in 48 days we can kill them off and have this humongous. And you go, how is that possible? And it's like, it actually isn't, because
it's pharmaceuticals.
It wouldn't exist if we didn't do it. I mean, you have Belgian blue, the monster cow, where you have to give the cows a cesarean. They cannot give birth because they are just muscle mountains. They look horrible. You have modern turkey. Turkey meat has gotten really popular in Sweden in the past 20 years or something. The turkey farms, and this might gross some people out, there is people employed to be masturbators of the male, because the females are so big that natural procreation does not work. So there's people whose job it is to masturbate the male turkeys so that they can then make the females pregnant to have new turkeys. It's like, that is just fucking odd. Why? It's like
apocalyptic.
What? It's like, how is that possible? It's like, it's crazy. It's just crazy. That was
it. Really is.
Jonathan Safran Foer wrote a book. Yeah. He wrote a book called Eat Meat, I think. I always get the name of this book wrong. But anyway, I read it. Me and my ex-husband, we read it 10 years ago or something. And that was kind of the drop. Because he gives all of these stories. And you just go, it's crazy. I mean, it's like, in a sense, like the society we have today, that's the crazy shit. Yeah. We're not normal at all. It is just totally bonkers. Yes, completely.
And I feel that is how I feel every time I look at crowd scenes from, I follow on Instagram a lot of history, like color, partly because of my photography background. I love following color restorers and photographic restorers who get like old film clips. And so there's that, but there's also just, there's a guy who found a bunch of like old film in a storage shed or something like that. And he's slowly dripping it out on this Instagram. I think it's called the Anonymous Photo Project. I'd have
Mhm.
to look it up. It's just wonderful. It's all from the 50s. But again, you look at like a crowd and everyone is slim.
Yeah.
Or more to the point, everyone is the size, more or less. There's a few portly older guys,
Yeah.
but just a little portly. They wouldn't even qualify as, fat nowadays. But you see, and you just think, like, what happened? Because if you
Yeah.
took a crowd shot today of any crowd at the rural exhibition, at a concert in the city, no matter where you did it, and then contrast that with one generation ago,
Yeah.
like something has really gone wrong. And it's canaries in the coal mine all over the place. And
Yeah.
now, I've got a really good friend who's essentially kind of a soil scientist.
Mhm.
She is a consultant for farmers, basically, to figure out how to use compost and how to make sure that your soil is sort of where it needs to be. But the general sense that I get is that our soil nutrient, the quality of soil around the globe is
It's
going
going
down
down.
as fast as our sperm count.
Yeah.
And it's just bottoming out. And it's interesting, when I hear you talking about the turkeys and the cows that can't give birth and the turkeys that can't reach through the tubby tubby chickens to get some action. And I think about that and I think, well, how do we square all this? Because I know that right now, especially compared to really at any point in the past, everything is better than it was by a lot of really important measures, whether it's infant mortality, education, literacy, um, longevity of human life, the number of wars, the number of people starving, the number of, the only thing, of course, going in the opposite direction is mental illness, but um, that everything, like we are feeding more people than we've ever fed before. There's not this whole kind of population myth that was kind of told in the 60s that was kind of like the overpopulation scaremongering around we're going to run out of food for everyone. It's like, well, no, we figured like agriculture also modernized. So we got really good at producing food on a large scale. So we actually have fewer people starving now, and that's including the whole world, not just the modern West. But what's the cost? Because
Yeah.
clearly this didn't work either. Like what we're doing now is a short-term band-aid that
That is killing us.
when you look at, it's killing us, it's killing our birth rates. The sperm count
Mm.
is
Yeah.
plummeting,
Yeah.
really terrifyingly. And so is our soil quality.
Yeah.
But and that's the thing that no one is ever talking about is it's everyone's like climate change, climate change, climate change, because they're looking at hundreds of years down the road. Or worse yet, they're saying that we're all going to be literally underwater in 10 years. And it's like, it just,
Chill.
yeah, but nobody is talking about the fact that our sons now have like 40% of the sperm that my dad did or does. Or like, that the decline in the sperm count
Mhm.
is a bomb waiting to
Massive.
explode.
Massive.
And
Yeah.
like like in some of those apocalyptic movies we've seen where people can't get pregnant. And
Yeah.
that's happening faster than, no matter what you think about climate change or how fast it's happening, that's a real thing. Like
Yeah.
sperm is an incontrovertible fact of reality that is not debated, that is not, well, it could be happening. We don't know how fast. And, I know we said Reagan was going to do it. Nothing ever happened there, whatever. I don't mean to be coming across as the skeptic, but I am skeptical about the conversation about climate change and what is enforced to be said.
Yeah.
And that there's a lot of claims, a lot of hyperbole, and a lot of that. I'm like, I'm starting to feel like this is as muddy and messy and corrupt as all these other conversations happening around, in the same way that I'm just going to step back and try to grow some vegetables. But it's just, the point is the things that are really, really undeniably like 5-alarm fire nobody's talking about, like the quality of soil, or there was a while there that people were talking about the bees.
Yeah.
But that was, I think, as far as I know, that was proven to not be, that was like
Well,
acid rain. That was something that didn't really amount to anything. But sperm count, though, happening that fast, and also obesity and the size that we're reaching, and the corruption of our food and drug.
yeah, and
Yeah,
depressions, and it's like, what did
yeah.
I think it flashed the number one cause of death amongst, I don't know, 20 to 30-year-old males in the US. Is it opioids or suicide? And you go,
I
oh,
know.
yeah.
I was assuming that, I would say it's, I mean, if I was going to name 3, I would still put suicide and car crashes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And it's like,
yeah.
I and so this is one of the reasons why I think this aspect of not being curious is so dangerous.
So it kind of offends me a lot of the time. You know, sometimes I fall into a trap of speaking like this in social company, which is always a mistake. But sometimes if you know, things are flowing, and I'll be like, really though? Like, isn't that really like what we're going with now? And people will be like, what? And I'll kind of talk a little bit, and then and somebody will say something like, I just don't understand why you care so much. I mean, gee, you seem really like worked up about this. And I'm like, I don't understand how you don't care. Like, you see this, but you're pretending not to see it. You know that this is true, but you're pretending not to know it's true. Because you're looking at me now and you're like, yeah, I know. I'm lying right now. Like, everybody's just lying about the human condition, about sex, about gender, about sexuality, about race. And there's just, everyone's got all these sort of highly profitable fictions. Not all of it is fiction, but a lot of it is just kind of, you know, trumped up ridiculousness. And they know it. And when you get someone one-on-one and you kind of just ask more questions, and ultimately it's like, well, I know, but I just want to be kind. I'm just trying to live my life. I'm just trying to be kind. And I'm like, and basically, then why aren't you being kind? And I always think, well, because I can't, I don't want to lie. That's my principle. And my principle doesn't change with my politics. I don't want to tell things that I knowingly know are false and untrue. It doesn't feel healthy for me or for the world. And yeah, anyway, sorry. I think I cut you off there, but
I had a coach client, and we were speaking about this, about honesty. And I said, you don't really go wrong with honesty. You can maybe not get the contract or the deal or whatever, and that might hurt you in some way. But if you look at it from a point of integrity, from a point of, how do I want to be in the world? How do I show up in the world? And is that the way that I want to be? It's like, you don't really go wrong. And you say, yeah, but I don't always say everything. It's like, that's another thing. I don't have to say everything all the time. I don't have to lay it all out. I can keep things in. But what I say and how I say, I want to stand for it. I want to say, yes, I stand for this. I have this question or this worry, concern, or this pet peeve, or whatever it is that I feel like sharing. Do it in such a way that, I can stand for this. Not necessarily that I always will think this. Maybe somebody comes to me in 10 years and says, hey, Helena, in one of these podcasts, you said this, this, and this. And I go, oh, yeah, I don't do that anymore at all. So I'm not saying you can't change, but I won't ever say, I hope I didn't say that, or no, you're lying, or anything. It's like, yes, I said that, and since then I've moved on. I don't agree with that anymore. But just be honest. And I think, again, the lack of curiosity is the thing, that it is this fragility bubble that we have built up, where if I just pretend it's not there, I don't hear, I don't see, I don't speak, we can kind of pretend. And for a little while you can. And then life fucking happens. And you realize, no, actually, that was a bad idea. And some people get those life happen things more often than others do. And I'm kind of happy about the life happens things that has happened to me, because it's gotten me to this point, and I like who I am. I enjoy being me, curious, quirky, filled with contradictory beliefs. It's like, yeah, and it's like, yeah, I like this. And I get insights every time I have a therapy sessions. I get new fucking insights. I was telling a friend today, it's like, oh, the Monday insight. And she's like, are there more insights? And I'm like, yeah. It's like they don't run out. But I like that. I love that. Does everybody have to be like me? No, please don't be.
Yeah.
But be curious. I would so enjoy, or rather, I do so enjoy to meet with curious people, where you just kind of take a meandering conversation. You have no fucking idea where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and it opens up, and it helps me make dots. It helps me make connections between dots. And all of a sudden, okay, I'm a little bit clearer or a little bit more muddled. And both of those are good.
Yep. Because you're being active. Yeah. I mean, I've had that happen so much, where I say something unfashionable, or ask the wrong question, or ask any question at all. Just, again, stuff that we've covered before. And someone else who doesn't want to think about the thing, or who's, here we are. It's interesting. We were talking about tribal cultures before, and now I'm about to use that word in a not so flattering way, but people who want to stay in their tribe, and who want to be seen as being adherent to their tribe. And the answer has more often than not been something like, I don't understand why you're upset about this, or gee, I can see that you feel strongly about this. And it's, again, this very, men don't say that. Men are just like, okay, well, this is what I think. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, this is what I think. And we talk about stuff. Whereas women are more sort of like, they sort of do this thing where it's this kind of, well, gee, you seem really upset about that. I just don't get it. I don't understand why you care. And I'm like, well, should I say that when you talk about the Ukraine? I mean, I could say that when you talk about anything. Why do you care about cancer? You don't have cancer. Why do you do that run for cancer every year? Like, what a thing to say to someone about their intellectual awakenings, their curiosities, their passions, their pet causes. Why does Ricky Gervais care so much about animals? I don't get it, Ricky. Why do you care? Because he cares. Because he clearly has personal stakes, personal experiences, and his own damn reasons why he cares about animals, or why my friend, so-and-so cares about Ukraine and is running a thing to bring Ukrainian refugees here. Good for you. We can talk about that thing, but I'm never going to look at someone and try to dismiss everything they're saying because it's inconvenient to my worldview, and then write that person off by saying, well, aren't you just a little testy? Or like, I don't understand why you care. You're not this person, or, stay in your lane kind of a thing. It's like, it's all of our lane.
Precisely. And I think that is, again, part of the reason why I am so happy to be in so many companies and conversations where the sticky conversations aren't dismissed, banned, shut down, removed, taken away. You cannot do that. You cannot talk about it. You cannot bring it up, etc. But rather, I was at a dinner and we were talking about politics for the Swedish election coming up. And we were from all sides of the political spectrum. And we just had the loveliest conversations about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, precisely, it's like that. It's like, yes, there is hope.
Those are the friends I want. Yeah. Those are the friends I want. That don't, you can see like their faces getting red and they're getting like angry and there's spittle flying. And I'm like, I hardly said anything at all. And you're calling names and you're throwing, and you're threatened right now. Like you're like a cat in a corner with your back up. And it's boring to me. It's really boring. So
yeah, we need more of that.
And that's to me, that's where there's smoke, there's fire. So when you're told what you can't say, what you can't find funny, what you can't even talk about, what you can't question, I'm like, that's a house of cards over there. If we're not allowed to just say, really though? If you're not allowed to crack a joke, if you're not allowed to do any of those things, that over there is a house of cards. And they know it, and I know it, and I know they know I know it. But we're all pretending it's not. And they're trying to protect this house of cards by building a concrete boundary around the house of cards. And I'm like, well, I don't want any concrete in my conversations. I want to be able to talk about things. And that's when my sort of, meter goes off is when it's like, you can't say that. And it's like, oh, I think I will. Because it's a house of cards then. I would never want to be in such a weak position where somebody expressing mild skepticism would make my entire worldview crumble to the ground. It's like, then that's a problem. Then I need to do some work on my, I need to get some different input on my worldview.
And
I need to start asking some questions. I need to get diverse friends.
And it again ties into the lack of curiosity. It's like, because if you are curious,
tragic.
It's really hard to get to that point where you're just getting, the temper level, the pressure cooker within is just building and building and building. Because if I'm genuinely curious, I will be curious about myself as well in such a situation and go, hey, what's going on with me? Here, I must have come across a belief here that I didn't know was so strong. What's there? And then you can, there are so many yes and possibilities there. You can go anywhere with that. But if you are afraid of the yes ands, like you say, you're very threatened. And being threatened, feeling threatened is a horrible feeling. It's like, it
makes you feel sick to your stomach.
It's like, I really, really don't want to feel that. Have I felt it? Oh, yes. Does it still happen? Oh, yes. But less and less when it comes to opinions or beliefs or, the politics, the norms, the this, that, and the other thing. It's like, I can feel it in certain topics. It's like, if I say this, am I going to be totally ostracized? And that can make me go, Then I hope that I'm using my discernment to say, okay, I won't do this now. But I won't play along. And I might, like you say, I might say, take my leave of that company. If that's what's going on there, I will extract myself and, I don't want to be a part of that. But
and I know it's not because they might disagree with you. It's because people are not able to have a conversation.
Yes, precisely.
And so you have to have, there has to be a basic level of good faith there that people are not just collecting evidence for your unfashionable opinions, that they're actually
politically incorrect opinions or something.
Yeah, exactly. And you can kind of, I don't know, I'm at the point where I can smell that pretty far away. And so I generally just don't I just don't say anything. So, but sometimes I do because of ego, because I'm just fed up with this shit and I can't. It just kind of comes out like a sneeze, and because sometimes I want to be a fly in the soup because the soup is poison. So I want to be that fly in the soup. I want to create cognitive dissonance for people where they're like, well, Kate's a nice person and I've known her for 20, 30 years. And I'm in her house, or we're out together at a restaurant or whatever. We're having a lovely time. We've seen each other through really hard times, and now she's saying these things. I would hope that the people who have known me, even for a few years, even for a few months, would be like, okay, this person just said something that has made, I'm starting to feel this feeling of, whoa, like I'm starting to become electrified. But I like this person.
Yeah.
I've spent time with this person. I have history with this person. So why don't I just say, tell me more about what you just said. What exactly do you mean when you say that? But instead, there's just shut down, shut down, shut down, shut down. I cannot allow this to continue. I am becoming tainted by association. This whole thing, instead of, like you say, that base level of curiosity, that if this is my friend for the last 20 years, and if this person is an irreconciled bigot, then I have terrible judgment, because I guess I've been friends with an irreconcilable bigot for the last 20 years. Or I could ask my trusted friends, what led you to seeing things this way? Tell me more about that. And trust that they are not, knowing that I came from where they are, like that I was on the left wing, like, and it's not to say I'm on the right wing now. I'm kind of politically homeless. I'm nowhere. But that is a grave offense to not be singing in the choir,
And it's
Curiosity
also
is a prerequisite.
it is. And it's also this aspect of, keeping two thoughts in your head at the same time. It's like somebody could be an irreconcilable bigot, but maybe they're at the same time the most generous friend I have. Or, I have the most interesting conversation, or we can play music together. Or, it's like, what is there? What can I take with someone, and what don't I take with someone? What's okay? Again, I don't want to think alike as everybody that I know, because that would be so boring. So when somebody comes
I already did that.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't really do anything. But so it's interesting to consider this fact also, that where would I draw the line? And I don't know where I draw the line. What is okay? What is not okay? I would rather, it's like if somebody's really, really mean, I think I would have a harder time with that than if they are a theoretical bigot or racist. It's like, but I don't really, do they beat their wives or husbands or kids or something? Okay, how do I do it? It's like there's so much, and I like the fact that there isn't one principle that says they go and they stay. It's like, no, because there's more to all of us. I don't want to condone bad behavior, or whatever you should call it, like meanness, or and it's like, I don't see myself as a racist. I don't think I am a racist, but I'm sure I am. Or probably I am in some ways. That I might not even
be. Every human being on the world is that.
Yeah, precisely,
every
right?
Being in the world.
So it's like, how do I wonder if it is actually about me coming to terms with all that I am. The light sides and the dark sides, and the one sides that I'm happy about, and the sides that it makes me cringe and go, oh, why the fuck do I X?
Yeah.
And that makes it easier to be the same with everybody else. It's like, okay, I'm a full human being, flaws and all, warts and all. So are you. And then that doesn't mean that I have to make you my best friend, because maybe there's no chemistry. Maybe, you're interested in talking about stuff that I'm not interested in. That's fine. But I don't have to write you off because you are thinking politically incorrect things or politically correct things if I'm someone who's thinking politically incorrect things. It's like, but that's where the charge, the energy is. It comes from the different poles. You need the two poles to have the spark of energy in between them. Without them, nothing happens.
And it's hard anyway to judge, because even to say, all of those words are now meaningless, because a word like bigot has been applied to people who sit the wrong way on the subway. So it's all subjective. Even words like racist or sexist don't really mean anything anymore, because they certainly apply to all people
Everything
within
that's done.
immutable groups. So, which makes them mean nothing at all. And the other thing is the reality that, it's words like that are usually thrown at the working class as little grenades from extremely affluent, overeducated people who are using words like that to punish people they've always loved to hate. And so it has a lot to do with an elitism that, if you were frank about it with certain people, they would get extremely upset and angry, because they think themselves far, 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 far above that kind of class warfare. That's what it is. I'm surrounded by lobster fishermen and foresters in my life and in my location. And it has a lot to do with that. It just has a lot to do with that, is people that are actually living to check and that are working really physically hard and doing working class jobs. All of the people who are side-eyeing me for my incorrect opinions, all they had to worry about during COVID was, where are they going to get organic, free range, grain-free dog food for their purebred? And I'm like, and then they were, talking shit about people that needed to keep working. And we're like, this lockdown is ridiculous, because they have to keep working. And I'm like, they don't have your actual real privilege, financially and economically speaking, but you just love hating these people. So, but it's hard, because it's hard to have uncertainty. And so we get to this age, we want certainty. We want to express our authority on things. And it's really scary to feel like you've lost your sense of certainty, and that you might be morally, there's this whole on the right side of history thing. And ironically, the people who say it the loudest are usually the ones committing the gravest authoritarianism. So, it's a failure of curiosity is what it is. And it really does tweak a lot of really personal bells. And I'm a heretic, especially because I'm not a fisherman, I'm not a lobsterman or a forester. I'm someone who, voted on the far left my whole life, and the people that are all in my social circle all knew that. And so things go quiet for a few years, and now I am who I am, knowing what I know and having had the experiences I've had, which were a deep unveiling of certain realities that before I would have been in complete denial of. And so that makes me an especially burnable witch, because I was one of them. I was like the kind of person that you couldn't say stuff like that around. And I would probably nod my head. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, guys on the subway, fucking misogynist. Because I wasn't thinking things through, and I didn't have teenage sons at the time, or whatever it is, that I hadn't worked in diversity, equity, and inclusion professionally for years. I hadn't had that direct experience of the underbelly of all of this movement and everything that's pushing it forward. So it makes it, this is all looping around to everything we started out with in terms of what it is to be fragile, what it is to be aging, what it is to be accountable to the self. And I feel like, if anything, I'm more neurotic now than I ever was, because I'm constantly examining, am I the dick here? Like, am I speaking from my ego right now? Or am I expecting too much of my friends? Are they my friends? I don't know. Like, what are their boundaries of friendship? Have I strayed outside theirs? Or have they strayed outside mine? Plus, now that I'm not drinking, or, now that I have this uncomfortable kind of medical reality in front of me that people kind of cringe in front of, there's a whole lot of like othering going on that isn't intentional. But sometimes it is intentional. I go to my car. So it is a fascinating sort of second puberty, where you're just questioning everything. You're questioning how you show up in a community, what you want the rest of your life to look like. You're nowhere near being ready for retirement, but you're, launching and lurching towards 50 and thinking about that next phases in life. And I think that's what I try to remember, is everyone is struggling with all of this, with these kinds of neuroses, and dealing with them in different ways. And we have to be patient with ourselves for being clumsy, but we also have to be patient with other people that we might be diverging from, maybe for a little while, maybe we come back later, maybe not, but we have to be patient with them too, to say, this is all of us right now. It's just, we're just flailing about, trying to frantically, find connection and find grass and fresh air and good food and a healthy body, when it feels like everything is stacked against us. So, yeah.
I think that's a good rant to end on.
Yeah. There's so many. Oh my gosh. There's so many. They're motivating
like that
for me anyway. So I hope they're useful for people that are listening, and for you too. So
I'm enjoying these conversations immensely.
yeah,
So
me too. So we just have one left, right?
I know.
This is number 4.
This is number 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there will be the getting together with more of the people from the season.
Yeah.
So either 1 or 2, depending on if we can get a date that fits everybody. So far, we haven't been able to do that. So it's always been 2. But that's a lovely way to also share and reflect a little bit on what is this like, the process of actually doing these conversations in the way that
cool.
they are. Yeah, it's usually, fantastic, because everybody, I mean, I get to see all of you, but maybe some of you listen to some of the others, maybe none of you do. It's like, but all of you are people that are good at these meandering conversations. So when we then put more of you together, lovely meandering conversations arise. Surprise.
Well, if I have to get up at 3:00 in the morning to do it, I will. So I don't know if everyone else is in Europe, or if it's a smattering of people from all over, but
no, you're actually not on the farthest. We have somebody in Washington State.
Oh, that's a tough one for Europe.
Well, it works.
That's a full 8 or 9 hours difference.
I don't even want to go into, because we had a time zone issue earlier this week, and I just told Kate I hate time zones.
I know.
So it's like,
I used to live in Vancouver, and that's Washington State, just over there. And then the company I worked for had offices in Amsterdam. And so trying to
it's in the morning, it's afternoon. So you have to
8 a.m., 5 p.m., like 5, 6 p.m. for wait, which is it again? Yeah, we were 8
a.m. in the morning.
And were,
in the afternoon.
That was a tough one for sure.
Yeah.
But we'll do it though. I will move whatever mountains have to be moved, even myself.
Excellent. That makes me so happy to hear. Well, thank you for another lovely conversation. And I will send you we'll set up our fifth. We'll set up our fifth. Yeah. So
that sounds
you
great.
go and have a lovely day.
Yeah, you too.
I will.
Bye, Helena.
I released a book a year and a half ago in the spring of 2021. That's called Doing Gentle with an Edge. And I didn't do a book launch then. I did a book launch party. I mean, I didn't do the party until July of 2022, but that was so much fun that I'm gonna continue to play with that book. So if you're wanting to play with me when it comes to that book, check it out at tankespjärn.com/shop. You will find it. It's available as an ebook and as an audiobook. And it's a short little book, but it's filled with good stuff that makes you think, or rather invites you to think. And I'm playing around with the idea of having, I don't know, monthly Zoom meetups to talk about either the book in general, the concept, Doing Gentle with an Edge, or maybe a chapter at a time or something. So I would love it if you went to check it out. And if it appeals to you, buy it, read it, and join in whatever will happen, because something will happen when it comes to this book. So do.